All right, so Bill is here with me. Flywheel has been looking at AI for quite some time, relatively speaking, right? Like 2 years. And we very quickly met AI 1 to Z, and we got excited about the fact that it was an AI platform that took the perspective of an agency delivering an experience for our clients. So there's a great tool set here, but it's been built from a perspective of allowing us to guide through that process. And you'll learn a little bit more about why that might be necessary, or at least helpful. And you'll get a chance to think about whether or not a tool like this is going to help your situation. Bill, do you want to just give us a little bit of your background?
Sure.
And what led you from birth to today?
Sure. I think the most relevant background was when I started in 1998, a web content management company called Extron. Started in my basement. We built a WYSIWYG editor, and that editor got deployed into almost every content management system out there in the world. Almost 25,000 editors were actually used by agencies to go build content management systems. And then we built content management, and we deployed that to 13,000 websites, including websites for the Bill Gates and Melissa Gates Foundation, to the Royal Albert Theatre in the UK, the Sydney Opera House. So all across the world, and agencies were using it and deploying it. That company is now Optimizely. And so it's a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, Forrester Wave. But I had to leave. When I left that company, I had some golden handcuffs. When those golden handcuffs came off, my love and passion is around content management, bringing information, personalizing experiences. And so that's how AI 1 to Z got formed, around the concept of building something that's not a crappy chatbot, but something that actually can get things done.
And we got a chance to join Bill and the team in Vancouver at Web Summit last week and get sort of that firsthand experience to some of the reaction. I was also talking to Bill the day after the long weekend. I said, "Hey, Bill, how was your long weekend?" He goes, "It was great. I coded the whole weekend." So when we're talking, so we're gonna do a little bit of chat about AI, and then we're gonna show a demo. So I think that when folks are thinking about AI, there's a bit of a gap between I understand what it can do for me when it's at the end of my arm, when it's an assistant on my phone, but when I'm running a business, how is this going to actually elevate my business, my digital experience? The slide at the moment, I think, shows some of the answers to that question. What do you think is sort of the biggest driver, the biggest influence for why you should actually pay attention and think about how to adopt AI?
So the dream of a digital assistant always has been to improve efficiencies. And the trouble was, over the last number of years, once you start interacting with a chatbot, as that person interacts, they change their mind, they do something different, and literally the chatbot blows up because it gets down a path and it can't handle it. All of that has changed with this new agentic AI. In fact, it's revolutionizing search as well. So when you think about a conversation, you're bringing the brand of the voice of the brand to the website, because it's the ultimate personalization engine that's interacting with it. So if you have people that come and so few clicks get accomplished what they want to do, they're usually going to convert a visitor to a buyer or to get to some goal.
I think we got personalization at scale on the slide. I think that kind of is what you were touching on there. We've known for a long time that personalized digital experiences are more effective. When you can do it well, it shortens the user journey. I don't like saying buyer journey because the journey continues after the purchase, right? And I think a lot of times we forget about that. But the user journey can now be personalized so much easier at scale. Correct.
It really comes into play with the information that your bot has available to you. You know, this morning we heard this conversation around what HubSpot described as if you could, that AI is going down this, basically this funnel that's making it easier and easier and easier to talk to all your systems of record. I'm extremely excited about a newer technology that just came about called MCP. It's a protocol that allows you to talk to a system. HubSpot supports it. And so will all sorts of other companies. It's going to be the future way to integrate. So when you think about what makes these AI assistants really intelligent is that not only does it have the access to all your content, but it has the access to all of your systems. And that means that it's going to be able to do things that were never ever possible before to do until now.
So I think the possibility is something we can all dream about. Well, that sounds really wonderful, and I think there's a lot of hesitation in the market. It's not like everybody's gone like, okay, great, sign me up, I'll buy it. I've got a few hesitations that we've become familiar with on the slide at the moment. Same question against this list. Which one of these criteria do you think is creating the most friction in terms of AI adoption?
So we always get hit with, will you take our data and use it to train the models? You know, everyone's worried that, you know, your LLMs are getting trained by your data. So that's one hesitation. Another hesitation that you see is the concept of, will the bot do something that I'm not expecting? Will it hallucinate? And will it create things? And so how do you put the guardrails around it to stop it from doing those things? So those are the kind of the biggest impacts that are out there in the market.
And I'm going to just sort of make a comment about the first bucket, the leadership part. I liked what, you know, I kind of made a joke about it at the time, but it definitely does require some experimentation at the moment. And I think there are certainly brands who don't want to be seen as experimental. It's professional and buttoned down, and that's who we are, and that's fine. You can come to AI in a few years. The rest of us are excited to use it and learn from it, and adapting a posture of being able to iterate through the deployment, the implementation, the monitoring, the management.
I think there's an AI maturity model that all companies want to go through. And that maturity model isn't trying to come up with how do we get everything done? It's actually working with people like Scott and actually coming up with what is your AI strategy? What do you want to get accomplished? And how do you start out simple, get things done, get things with success? What we love is that when somebody does a project and they come back to us immediately and say, well, could it do this? Could we use it on this other site? And they start seeing, because of, it always beats their expectations. And once they see that, they start to think of all of the other places that it can be used. And this is where you start out, you ingest your site, you start using it as a search tool, because at the end of the day, it answers questions and gives you the answer immediately, and then you're going to see it takes you down a journey. And that journey is to have calls to actions to get that user to the next step, because it understands, because you're telling it as what does your brand want to get accomplished with this user, and so to continue to bring them down those calls to actions and bring them down those steps.
So a lot of terms. You've mentioned a few yourself here. I asked AI for a list of AI terms and modified it a bit here. It's overwhelming.
We're going to get through them all. No.
But I mean, I love the journey that I can go on with AI, and I can go down rabbit holes of research and exploration and personal discovery. That's one of the really cool things about it. But you don't want to, your employer probably doesn't want to pay you to do that. A few words that we've highlighted from that collection I think are worth touching on. I think some of these are a little bit more familiar now that the technology's been around a while. I'm going to kind of jump around on this slide. Can you explain for us what RAG is? Because I think it's so fundamental to understanding how to adopt this technology as a business.
Yeah, so RAG, from our perspective, is another integration. It's what integrates to the CMS system. So Sitefinity, we have a connector. We ingest the content into this RAG integration. This RAG integration itself has what we call a vector database. So a vector database is different than a normal database that you're probably used to. So ultimately with RAG, this is one of the ways that we put the guardrails on, so that when you ask a question, we take your question and go to this vector database and say, give us the closest results to this question. So they'll come back with 20. You can go up to 200 results, but 20 is a good number. So when you get those 20 results, those results are the context that the large language model is using to answer the question. So it answers the question based on your content. Not if you said, what's the capital of France? Obviously, the large language model knows it's Paris. But you've instructed through the system prompt that you only want it to answer questions based on your content, so it should come back with essentially an I don't know, or that's not the scope of what this agent is. Important thing about RAG is that I can ask the question in Japanese, in Chinese, in French, and if I only have English content, it's still going to answer the question in the language that you're doing. It's completely different than what you're used to when you think about search, which is really keyword-based. A vector database is meaning-based. And so when you say, you know, where is the momentum event in Toronto, and you say it in Chinese, the meaning is exactly the same. That's how we can find the vector documents. So when we store that information, we always create this vectors, and it's the vectors are 1,536 vectors. So think of, we're used to 2-dimension, we're used to 3-dimension, we're not used to 1536. And if we're using foreign languages, we double that number of vectors so that we can accurately find the meaning within that content.
Well, I'm glad that you know the answer to that question with that much more context than I do. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Yes.
So it's essentially, if I can paraphrase, it's doing this job of sort of finding sort of a directional answer. It's finding approximate answer. It's finding a generalized location where context can be found, where some of that information can be understood. It's bringing that back, and it's using the rest of the system and the software to give you a meaningful answer to your question.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Some of the other terms on the screen here I think are more familiar. The assistant is that chatbot experience. The context is everything else that's been happening leading up to, during, and after, and as that conversation continues. You'll see how context is used in the frame of reference of the system in a minute. Integrations. The slide used to say agents. It now says integrations. I like that better. AI knowing how it can extend its own capabilities with a fair degree of automation. I'm going to come to model last because I'm going to ask you to define model for me. And I'm going to leave system prompt out because that's on the next slide in more detail. But the token is essentially how the AI breaks down the question and the data as it's processing it. It's not bits and ones and zeros as much as it is chunks of data. And it is the volume of tokens that determine how much it costs to use an AI model.
Yes.
What is a model in the frame of reference in this context?
So most of you are familiar with ChatGPT. You've probably all used it. So the foundation of ChatGPT is this large language model. In the case of ChatGPT, it's usually GPT 4.x version. Now, one of those versions you're using today. So what ultimately has happened is that AI is all linear algebra. You know, when we talk about vector database, it's linear algebra. When we talk about training a LLM model, we're giving it training data, and that training data keeps on going through and processing and adjusting weights, and literally there's billions of weights that it's adjusting. And that's why it costs so much money to make an LLM model. But that price is coming down. So you pick the model for what features and functionality that you want to get accomplished. So there's some well-known companies that are doing it. There's Google with their Gemini series. There's Facebook with their Llama series. You have also, you know, there's lots of models that are out there, and nobody thought 2 years ago that anyone would actually be able to compete with OpenAI because they came out so dominant. But there's reasons to pick other models for particular use cases.
And I think that's probably a rabbit hole you could dive down and fill a whole day's worth of content on the nuance. Is it, how important is it to understand the nuance and the difference between these models when you're doing something like what most of the people in this room are going to be doing, bringing it forward to their experience?
So in general, our partner usually analyzes what you're doing and decides which is the best model. GPT-4o Mini, for most RAG applications, is the highest return on investment for you to go and use it, because its cost has dropped over 1,000 times since it was introduced as a GPT 3.5 model to what it is now at a GPT-4o Mini. And it keeps on incrementing in functionalities, capabilities, and what can it do. Back when we first started talking, we had a 4K context window. That means that I can take up to 4K of information, put it in the LLM with a system prompt, and spit out an answer. Now, with technologies like from Google, that context window is now 2 megs. So the model that I talked about is 128K, which is, honestly, it's way big enough for almost any application that you're going to do for an assistant, in our case, assistant that's usually used on a website.
All right, so what that boils down to is, don't worry, trust us, hire Flywheel, okay?
Yeah.
All right, I promise that we kind of get into an understanding of how AI 1 to Z works. And after talking to Bill many, many times, this was my attempt at explaining his platform, and then he said I got it, reasonably accurately. So, and this is where the system prompt comes in. So you've got, and you're going to see this in a minute, you've got a chat-like experience on the front end of the website. A user asks a question. The first thing that happens after you ask that question, and even ChatGPT does this when you're using it on your phone, is it first adds additional instructions that you don't see. And that's the system prompt. So there are details that you, with our help or somebody else's, can insert into the prompt after the question gets asked. So you might be asking about a particular product, and then the system prompt adds, and oh, by the way, Don't you dare recommend something from one of my competitors. You always have to provide 2 options. It has to be technically accurate because I'm selling a technical product. And that adds relevance and structure to the value that you're ultimately going to get from the answer. That is what gets passed to, quote unquote, the reasoning engine, which is essentially the proprietary bits, right? So then that goes into software that goes, okay, how am I going to answer this question? And there's an up and down arrow in the middle of the slide that points to integrations. So an integration in that case can be your own vector database, your own RAG data repository of your own content that nobody else can see. We've plugged that in. It could be ChatGPT. It could be some other automation, another agent, another activation that goes, oh, you're asking about a product. I have a script over here that's purpose-built for doing product comparison and selection. So you asked a question about that. I know I can use that integration to solve this problem. So the reasoning engine is doing the heavy lifting of determining, it's AI, going, okay, what did you ask me? What have I been told? How should I treat it? Figuring out which integration to use in order to best answer that question for you, and then presenting that back to the user. But first, going through a translation to make sure that it's formatted and output properly so that it matches your visual identity, your brand voice, your user experience. So the output template is where we add a little bit more instruction. There's actually maybe some HTML or some CSS involved there to make sure that the way that the information is presented is consistent with the user experience that we want to deliver. That ultimately creates the answer and allows you to continue the conversation. Would you refine any of that, Bill?
I think that's great. I would just say one extra thing about that reasoning engine. So that reasoning engine, when it needs to go to RAG to get an answer, that's the most common thing it's going to do. But the second thing that it needs to do is it needs to say, is there any other tools or integrations that I should be using? So out of the box, things like email, Google's Maps, Google Places, things like that. But then this is where this new MCP protocol, all of a sudden, literally in months, you're going to be able to connect to thousands of other integrations that make your virtual assistant way, way more intelligent because it can get answers and it can push data in. So again, the answer with HubSpot, you pass information like the email, who this user is, in HubSpot. Now you can bring this context back to the AI assistant to go create an answer to the user that's personalized to them.
And I think one of the main reasons for showing this diagram is to then draw the line back to the friction and the hesitation that we were talking about a few slides ago. Transparency, data security, sort of the safety and the clarity around the experience that you're providing. So the other thing that's not on the diagram is the fact that we together can log in and we can see the interactions that have been going through the system, and we can actually drill down and see what did the reasoning engine decide. Why did it make that decision? Where did it get the information back from? And we can use it to see a history of the engagements that are being provided so that we can work on refining it, improving it, validating it, and that kind of thing. So it goes a long way to address that confidence gap that I think sort of is a stand-in for many of those other hesitations that we talked about.
So we keep on putting more AI into the pipeline. Actually, Oliver was a very important inspiration on one of these ideas where we were trying to look at why did it answer a certain way. And so we've decided that we're going to put in an AI assistant that can look at the results and click Analyze. And then it can analyze your content that came out of your CMS system that we use as context, the system prompt, the answer, and a little box to say, why did you think this answer was not correct? And then it will analyze that and come out with an answer and maybe make a suggestion to what you should do to the system prompt to avoid that from happening in the future. So just like what you're seeing with Scifinity, they keep on putting AI into their tools to make it easier to do things. We see that there's AI happening all the time to make it easier for you to set up and use, that you don't need to think so hard to, am I doing this correctly?
All right, so I promised that we would do a little demo and show you AI 1 to Z in action here to give you some context.
So one thing we should do is see if we're connected to the internet still.
Hopefully we're still connected to the internet. That's a good point. You don't want to end up with a, okay, we're good. But you had put a prompt in here, and
that's okay.
Now that you're right.
Just type in what are the activities.
Okay.
So here's what we're doing. So it's the brand of the voice. So this hotel website, it has a role: sell activities, book rooms, sell tours, be a concierge to anything that the user wants to do. And so when he types in the word, what are the activities, and he...
Hold on, I'm going to put my microphone down so I can do this.
When he types that in and he clicks next, the reasoning engine is actually doing a job of bringing them to the next step. So you see it says, learn about these activities, learn about yoga, learn about golf. So let's click on learn about golf. Scroll down a little bit, yep. So what's amazing here is that there is no programming that makes these things show up. There's a system prompt that's telling it, your job is to have calls to actions in here to get people to do it. So in this particular case, it's bringing up what's the golf course like. So in all of these cases, it's going to the RAG and saying, well, what activities do you have? And it comes back with these activities, and it says, oh, I'm supposed to bring people down a journey. And that journey is to learn about these activities. Now the next activity is to get them to buy. So now when we click sign up for golf, the next thing that we're doing is we're calling another integration. It's a form integration. So when you see here, down here, you're basically now going to get the sign up for golf. And we can fill in this. This is an enterprise form engine that can talk to backend systems. So now let's go to the next demonstration, which is the duplex. Yeah, Urban Edge. So in there, it's hard to see, but we added an image, and we're going to type in the words down below there. How do I fix this? So this is a ceiling with cracked paint. So now the AI is actually doing vision AI. Imagine you walked into your room and you see something cracked. You just take a picture of it and you type in what is a fix, and you're connected to this paint company. So now you're seeing how it's telling you, prepare the area, remove the loose paint, sand the surfaces. That's all coming out of their RAG because they have a big how do you fix guide. And so the AI is able to use their content. But at the end of the day, what their job is to sell products. So if you scroll down slightly more, you can see that we've ingested the content which has JSON LD in it. So JSON LD is what we love. We talk about how AI can handle unstructured data. You give us structured data and we're just going to take it to a whole next level. And that JSON LD has the image, the price, the SKU, everything that we need to add it to a shopping cart. So now let's just go to the next demonstration. So just go to the top here. So in this one here, we asked the assistant, hi there, how can Strava assist you today? And you said men's helmets. So this is a sporting company, right? And so it's suggesting sports products that are in here. But so we're doing it this way today. Next week, we're going to be doing it by having this MCP connector that talks to your e-commerce platform. So when we say, somebody says, what helmets do we need? Instead of us getting it from the RAG, we're actually getting it from your e-commerce system and showing the data in a much richer experience than what you're seeing here. So the challenge with this demonstration, to be honest with you, is that I'm showing helmets, but that helmet has sizes, it has colors, and the user, before he adds it to the shopping cart, wants to be able to change those. What we now are doing is providing the tools for them to be able to, when they show this in a list display, that they can do it. So that was like a 10,000-foot demonstration of what we're doing. The only one thing is, click on the small, that one there. So you can see, it's hard to see a little bit, but this, and then if you shrink it right here on the right-hand side.
This one?
Yeah. So you can see, this can open up, it can open up as a chatbot. It can open also up as a search bar. It knows the history of all the conversations that you had, like you do in ChatGPT. So if you click on the left-hand side, you can always look at what was my recent chats and be able to interact with those as well if you wanted to. So anyways, that I guess will get us to the questions part of the...
Well, back to sort of the structure of our presentation. When we're thinking about AI, and you're very excited about MCP, thank you for sharing that news with us. What is it that, if you're looking 12 months ahead, we want to be thinking about, and what's on the horizon? What really gets you excited besides MCP?
So, I think things are changing at such a rapid pace here, and what I love about working with customers is all the fantastic ideas that they have. So one of our customers is a Scifinity customer. It's called DART. They make the Dallas transportation system, and they're actually using the geo services around our platform to be able to know exactly where that user is, either in the mobile application or in the chatbot. And so they're using it to do things like, I want to get a train to the airport, or I want to get a bus to the airport, either one of those kinds of things. It's intelligent enough to know, I actually have to walk to a station. It's going to tell you where the station is. It's going to tell you to the second when the next bus is going to come at that station, so that you know how much time you have to go do those kinds of things. And of course, all the other hundreds of kinds of questions you're going to do. So when you start seeing, we talked about QR codes. So we're working with a museum that has QR codes. And so instead of the QR code just coming up and showing you in a chatbot, here's the content, I now can have a conversation about a piece of art because it came up there. We have a manufacturing company that's using not only either QR codes or those little metal tabs that you see on the platform, on the device. So it's a big air conditioner company. Service guy goes out. It says, I need to go fix this compressor. And the chatbot says, well, take a picture of the metal card. They take a picture. With the Vision AI, we can read anything. Driver's license, insurance card, anything, and we'll get all the data out of it. Now we have context to go to the manual and answer questions or order a part to go get replaced.
You got that, Kathleen? We got Environics data combined with just Vision AI, and you're never going to need us again. All right, any questions about what we've been talking about, folks?
Yeah, thanks. This is super interesting. One of the things I struggle from, both from working in the MarTech space and having to assess any number of different companies in terms of choosing what's the right tool to bring into my organization, or even from a candidate perspective, like how to assess, is there a true differentiation of what this company is offering versus someone else? So I guess my question for you is, how do you go about thinking about that? And this kind of connects into Scott's keynote this morning, which was around the fact that there's tens of thousands of these organizations out there. All of them are built on a specific LLM that comes from ChatGPT or somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily have the proprietary LLM themselves, but it's built as an application layer above it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my question, I guess, as it relates to your tool, if I'm assessing you versus any number of your competitors,
So-
how do I know where to go?
I guess what we have done is our go-to-market strategy is a little bit different. Because I come from the web content management world and have worked with agencies, for me, that is our channel. It's not going directly to customers and trying to sell the differentiation to them. We're building the tools into our platform that makes it easier for a agency to have a predictable business model so that they can debug and they can know what things are happening. So you don't see a lot of these tools in other kinds of back-end systems that we've put into our platform.
So in that case, it's more about the tooling interface and the management capabilities that it provides. So they're differentiating on their capacity to enable other business models as opposed to my AI is better than your AI.
Thanks for the presentation. It's been great. My question is around how are you accounting for shifts in user behavior? Because I think we can all agree that, LLMs are getting much better and people are using, as ChatGPT gets better, they're going to rely on it a lot more for their answers.
Yep.
And, it was discussed this morning that, a lot of searches are a no-click search. So how are you accounting for people just using things like Gemini and Copilot to get their answers and not going to an actual website to go down that journey?
Very good question. In fact, a week ago, Google announced something that caused a lot of companies to have a lot of concern because they basically skipped going to their company. So I think it's more important than ever that as a brand, that the experience on that brand has to be so compelling that the client is going to come back and use their brand. I think Tom's experience with his daughter, that they go just to those 4 or 5 different clothing stores, is kind of a testimony of the way people think. We're working with a university right now that spends $7 million on advertising budget, and they have no more money to add to that budget. So what they have to do is they have to convert people that come to that website at a much more higher conversion rate in order for them to actually achieve what their goals are going to do. So truth be told, back a few years ago, only certain companies could do what's possible today at a 1/10,000th of the cost. So that's the big difference. It's the tech that you can put in to compete like you're a big, big, big brand and have an ROI, a higher ROI than you have today. Because when you come to a website today and you go to a search box, it's nothing more than a research project. And after so many clicks, people leave.
Any other questions?
I have a question around just the speed of all of this and how you sort of determine now, like, when to invest, if you will, because, arguably Moore's law is gone at, the 2-year kind of track, and that in 6 months from now, things could change. Like, MCP is very exciting, but something else, another integration comes online. Where do you see kind of in the context of the next, say, 24 months? Like, I remember
Nothing's going to be more exciting than MCP. We are on a racetrack. All of us are on a racetrack. Every brand is faced with this problem. But you got to step in. You got to step in and you have to start learning. You have to do A/B testing. You have to understand how do you make the voice of your brand be represented on there. So often, this is where you do the crawl, walk, step. And as time goes on, hopefully you're partnered with someone that you're not ripping out your tool set and putting something else in. You're taking advantage of the new features and functionalities that are being part of the tool set that makes you be, agile and do the things that you need to go do.
I think it's also important to recognize that you don't have to boil the ocean. So you can, the best way to make progress is to start. And so it's just about making incremental gains, doing something that gets you familiar with the technology, gets you thinking about that part, that extension of your experience, and then letting it ladder up from there. And sometimes that will just happen very organically, very quickly, and sometimes there will be, one step back to take two steps forward, but again, sort of having visibility and transparency into how the systems are being used and setting yourself up from the beginning to have a posture to evaluate that adoption is, I think, how this finds longer term success.
And I think independent of us, independent of AI 1 to Z, you need to be thinking about every tool that you own and how does it actually connect to AI? Because at the end of the day, if you can use tools that are using AI, it's automating workflows. And that means that your users or employees are more efficient at doing the things that they probably were meant to go, you hire them for, but they're bogged down because they have to continuously log into some system to go compare to another system to go look at information.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, Bill. My name is Vinicius, and I work at the World Trade Center, Toronto. My question to you is, I know that the search process is changing.
Yes.
I don't use anymore Google for all my search. I use more ChatGPT than Google. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur that spent part of their budget with paid ads? What should I do now? How do I position my company in these LLMs? What should I change?
So this is an interesting strategy problem that every company is faced with. I hear so many companies say to me, I'm going to block these tools from looking at my brand. But if that's where the users are, you want to have some brand happening there. Yet you're not going to have as high a conversion rates because all of your competitors are out there. So you have to just think through some of these aspects around your business. And honestly, this is probably more of a Scott kind of question than it is an AI 1 to Z kind of a question, because it's basically a bigger marketing business strategy that you have to be thinking about around this entire ecosystem and how you play in it. But listen, you can learn so much so quickly by just like once a week on the treadmill watching videos on AI and what people are talking about, just so that you know what the possibilities are.
It all comes back to more exercise, people. Question at the back.
Hi. So, like literally everyone is, I see is building like a AI chatbot out there, right? So, like as an agency, we are like a consultant to our clients, and a lot of our clients are actually approaching us for the right AI chatbot, for their e-stores or for their, whatever the business they are. So how we can actually differentiate, like what are the points do you think when evaluating an AI chat platform, we should consider things that we should see in a AI chat platform, that it's not something built just using services from, and it has its own logical reasoning, and it is going to be the platform of the future.
Yeah, so some of this, like of what you're asking about, is like, how do you evaluate what should you be thinking about when you look at an AI type solution? So we particularly have white papers on the AI maturity model. We have a white paper that's on what should you be thinking about in your AI chatbot. And it becomes like a checklist as you're comparing products to each other to understand what those is. I'll share those white papers with Scott, and that way you will have, anyone that wants it from the conference, you're more than welcome to get those white papers.
Thank
Just a note, just to pick up on that comment about a maturity model. So that's kind of what we're getting at here is be really intentional about knowing where you are on that adoption curve. Is it something? Is this on? How about now? There we go. Be really intentional about where you are on that adoption curve, and just know that the beginning is discovery, and automation and full adoption is at the other end of the spectrum, and you want to go down that path in a manner that is appropriate for your business and your situation. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.